National University, we stay true to our brand promise.
And that is education that works.
Welcome to National University MOA, a happy place.
Welcome to the virtual tour of National University College of Dentistry. This learning institution is strategically located by the bay at the Mall of Asia complex. NUCD is accessible to both students and staff. It is conducive for learning, allows recreation, and hones creativity to flow through its panoramic view of the city, spacious classrooms, and state of the art facilities. At NUCD, we acknowledge classrooms as the heart of learning. As such, we give attention in detail to seat capacity planning, student teacher ratio, and provision of latest teaching tools such as providing television for every classroom. After every class, our open air lounge and wide halls provide a place of rest for our students where they can gather, share learning, collaborate, and build camaraderie among one another. NUCD's dental infirmary not only gives good patient experience by its ambient lighting, but also through the comfort of the latest and modern dental chairs and systems. As NUCD commits to a safe and hazard-free learning for all our students and clinicians, a separate sterilization room is provided for handling of both contaminated and sterilized materials. A separate X-ray room can also be accessed by all clinicians for their patient procedures. As NUCD continues to be at par with the global industry standard, the students are immersed and familiarized in handling the latest innovations in digital equipments. Providing education that works the National University way. Welcome to National University College of Dentistry, Mall of Asia.
Hey Studentistas! We are the NU Dentistry Student Council.
I'm Kuya Dwight, the NUDSC President.
I'm Kuya Reg, the NUDSC Vice President.
And I am Dr. Says, the NUDSC Advisor. Are you ready for the hashtag new norm?
In this first episode of Hashtag New Norm, andito kami sa school para ipakita sa inyo ang updates at developments na nangyayari dito ngayon.
And today, bibigyan namin kayo ng
New Clinic Reveal!
So even sa elevator ng NU MOA, sinusunod pa rin natin ang standard and protocols. So sa elevator is 4 na tao lang ang pwede bawat ride pataas.
Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord.
Dear Father, we thank you for everyone gathered here now.
Thank you that you know each of us by name and have caused us to walk with you.
We say that we are dependent on you and our trust is in you completely.
As we surrender ourselves in adoration, we welcome you amongst us today and
celebrate the gift of life that you have lavished upon each of us.
We ask that you may open our ears so we may hear your voice.
Open our minds so that we may receive your eternal wisdom.
Open our spirits so that we may know your leading and guidance.
And open our hearts so that we may receive your wonderful love.
Lord, we thank you for the speakers and facilitators.
We pray that you would give them great inspiration as they share with us what you have placed in their hearts.
We pray that you would fill them with courage and give them your peace.
We ask all this in the glorious name of Jesus. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang mag-ibig, telas ng silangalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, kuya ka ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisingil, sa nagataputok sa simoy at sa langit mong panglaw, ay hinatang tula, kawin sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtinig, ang bituin at karamdaman, pamay di magtitingin. Luman ang araw ng walang pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang higaya na pagkay mga amin, at mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
It's a sunny morning here in Manila, and I hope everyone is safe and well amidst the pandemic. Welcome back to another Wednesday here at our National Heritage Alumni Webinar Hour, Dadong's Legacy on Good Governance. Good day, Nationalians, here and around the world. I am Leroy Rubio, and we will be hearing another informative and interesting discussion that is very important to the NU community and to the entire nation. We will be hearing about the story of the man who had his humble beginnings as the poor boy from Lubao and went on to become the 9th President of the Philippines. We are live in the National Heritage Facebook page simulcast with the Museo at Aklatan ni Pangulong Diosdado Macapagal, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, SEAS Humanities, National U College of Education, Arts and Sciences, the Compendium, NU Society of Elementary Educators Facebook pages respectively via Microsoft Teams. Let us hear first the welcoming remarks to be delivered by the coordinator of the Nationalian Cluster, Dr. Richard Ryan C. Villegas.
Okay, so a pleasant morning to everyone. Okay, so again, our apologies for the delay, for the technical difficulties, but of course, rest assured that of course this will be an hour full of learning, as this time we will be listening and will be hearing the stories of a distinguished alumnus, okay, of Philippine Law School under National University at that time. Of course, though he only attended for 2 years, but still he left a long and lasting legacy to the nation. Okay, so especially as a president, and now that of course his daughter, of course, also assumed the presidency, also left an enduring legacy to us. And of course, now we will be hearing about the anecdotes, this time from, of course, his relatives and, of course, the family members on how President Diosdado Macapagal lived, not just a president, but as a man, and of course, as a father to many, and of course, his legacy the part of good governance. And I hope that each and every one of us would be enlightened, okay, amidst the situation that we are experiencing right now. Okay, so thank you very much, and I hope you sit back and relax and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas, for that very inspiring message. By the way, kindly send your shout outs and greetings in our FB pages and in MS Teams for National Union employees, students, and guests who are tuned in. You may also use this to type your questions to our guest speaker if there is any. Now, without further ado, let us now introduce our first speaker, our guest speaker. She is the daughter of the late President Diosdado P. Macapagal and the late Evangeline Macapagal. She is married to Jose Miguel Arroyo and has 3 children. She finished her Doctor of Philosophy in Economics at the University of the Philippines, Master of Arts in Economics at the Ateneo de Manila University, Bachelor of Arts in Commerce, magna cum laude, at the Assumption College. As an academician, she became the program chairperson of the Economics Department at Assumption College. From 1977 to 1987, she held teaching positions in several schools, notably the University of the Philippines and Ateneo de Manila University. She served as Assistant Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry under President Corazon Aquino in 1987, then Undersecretary 2 years later, while serving as concurrent Executive Director of the Garments and Textile Export Board. She entered politics in 1992 when she ran as senator, finishing 13th place in a 3-year term. She was re-elected again in 1995, topping the year's senatorial polls. She was elected vice president in 1998 and was appointed Social Welfare and Development Secretary by President Joseph Estrada. She assumed the presidency in 2001 after the historic EDSA People Power II. She got re-elected and president in 2004. After her presidency in 2010, she ran as district representative of the 2nd District of Pampanga, re-elected in 2013 and 2016. Was elected as the first female Speaker of the House of Representatives in 2018. In 2020, she was appointed by President Rodrigo Duterte as Presidential Advisor on Clark Programs and Projects. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give a big virtual round of applause to Her Excellency, former President and former House Speaker, Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, PhD.
Thank you, Leroy, for your introduction. President Ermita, Dr. Villegas, and the NU family, thank you for asking members of the Macapagal family to share some anecdotes, facts, and memorable experiences with our patriarch, President Diosdado Macapagal. I understand that you already had an earlier webinar last February with my sister Shelo and her family. Let me then add to our recollection, starting with a 10-minute account, after which I will turn over to my daughter, Luli, and my niece, Melissa, because your invitation was for members of the family and not just for me. My dad's nickname was Dadong, so I'll refer to him by that name in telling anecdotes from the days before I was born. After graduating from high school, Dadong went to Manila and worked in the Bureau of Lands to pursue a university education. He lived with his half-sister, Silveria Pangan Cabrera, and her husband, Juan, in their shack at the end of Pilapil Street, near what is referred to as Estero de la Reina Sapritil, in the then slums of Tondo, while he studied in the University of the Philippines in a liberal arts course in preparation for his study of law. He walked daily to school. Towards the end of his course, he collapsed at his desk at the Bureau of Lands where he was working at the same time as studying, he collapsed due to malnutrition. He was advised by the doctor to quit either school or work, but not to do both. He quit both because he couldn't have gone to school without working for it. Dadong returned to Lubao to nurse himself back to health. To earn money, he appeared as a zarzuela actor in vernacular plays written by his father and wrote for a vernacular magazine. Like his father, he had a way with words, written and oral. He wrote poetry in Kapampangan. His eloquence served him well as he progressed through his career as lawyer, diplomat, and later as politician when he could make an audience cry with a touching speech. After a year or so, taking the time off from school, Dadong felt strong enough and had saved some money to resume schooling, this time at the Philippine Law School. But 2 years later, he got into debt as he had finished up his savings and couldn't pay the school fees anymore. Providentially, a philanthropist by the name of Honorio Tizon Ventura offered to help him out in his last 2 years of college, but sent him to the UST, which was the alma mater of Don Honorio Ventura. Dadong became #1 bar top-notcher, and that was his gateway out of poverty. NU's letter of invitation says that Dad's character exemplifies the National University's core values of integrity, compassion, innovation, resilience, and patriotism. Indeed, in his memoirs, he said that he regarded integrity and a capacity for self-denial as the prime requisites for the presidency. He always believed in the primacy of integrity. That was the basic credo behind his vow of adherence to the creed of integrity and honesty, both for the good of our country and the honor of the common people. Dad took precautions against using public office for material gain since he became congressman in 1950. At that time, Cotabato was being offered to settlers. Plentiful land could be had for the asking. The governor of Cotabato offered to give him over 100 hectares of clean public land, which some Maranauquin were abandoning. Later, the concrete highway built with American aid traversed that parcel of land. And yet, my father declined to receive the land, and he explained why. He said to the governor, "As long as I am in public office, I will not receive from the government anything beyond my salary and lawful emoluments." Let me give some other anecdotes regarding Dad's adherence to the value of integrity. When my dad was a new president, in my mom's first birthday as First Lady, she received many gifts of value, but she had them politely returned. This was to set the tone during his tenure. Among those who offered birthday presents to my mom was an exporter industrialist whose business benefited from Dad's policy of removing controls on imports and foreign exchange. This exporter industrialist offered a gift to my mom consisting of 300,000 pesos worth of stocks in his corporation, endorsed in blank, and registrable in the corporate books at any future time. My mom expressed thanks for the thoughtfulness but declined the preferred gift. This was a sample and gives an indication of the temptations and opportunities that any president and his family has to resist as a part of setting the example in official morality. Also, even me, as the daughter of our president, I also received during my birthday some very valuable gifts, uh, high value shoes, handbags, etc. But my mother had them returned. So those were the values that my father exhibited, expressed in some anecdotes, and that he passed on to us. Then, Ennius also says that exemplified values of the university, one of them being compassion. My dad was a man of infinite patience. In the 40 years I knew him, from the time of my birth to the time of his death, I only saw him get angry 4 times. 4 times in 40 years, once per decade. A man of infinite patience and compassion. And you also has the value, imparts the value of innovation. Let me share a memory of Dad's interactions with another NU presidential alumnus, Carlos P. Garcia. Garcia was elected as president in 1961 and my dad as vice president in 1961. That was the time when NU had a president and a vice president elected together. Same school, but different parties. For the first time, the vice president was not from the same party as the president, was the head of the opposition, and had no job in the cabinet. But he innovated that idleness. He went around the country, got to know the people, and the people got to know him. And from that innovation, he became president of the Philippines in the next election. My father and the other alumnus of NU were rivals, but many years later, Doña Trining de Leon Rojas, widow of President Rojas, Doña Inday Garcia, widow of President Garcia, and my mom would be an inseparable trio of formidable first ladies as they arrived together in one car at all the official receptions in Manila to the delight of diplomats and politicians alike. In other words, you can be bitter enemies in politics, but somewhere along the way, you all become friends and allies. These are some of my memories of my dad and my mom. And I can say, therefore, that the values of National University were really in the DNA of my dad, Diosdado Macapagal. In closing now and turning over to my daughter and my niece, let me mention that tomorrow is the death anniversary of my father. And I thank NU for giving our family this occasion once again to share memories about him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Former President, for that very inspiring story about your father. I do believe that he is proud right now as any community honor his legacy, especially for the Filipinos. Let us now hear, this time, the anecdotes from one of the president's granddaughters, Miss Luli Macapagal-Arroyo Bernas, and Miss sorry, Miss Maria Elizabeth Macapagal.
Please, you can go ahead. You have the photos.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Very clear.
I sent some
Yes.
photos. Can you please show them? So, good morning, everyone. I'm Melissa Macapagal Mercado. Thank you for inviting our family this morning to speak about my grandfather. So, as Tita Gloria mentioned, I'm one of the granddaughters of President Diosdado Macapagal, and I would call him Lolo DM. So I would refer to him as Lolo DM. So I did not really prepare a talk, but I will be showing you some pictures I have of him, and I will just annotate these photos. I hope you can see the photos. So the first one is a family picture that my father kept. And I love this picture. It shows all the 4 children of my grandfather, Lola DM, and of course, Lola Eva, his wife. So my father is the one on the left. So my father was Arturo Macapagal. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2015. And then beside him is Tita Gloria. And then beside Lola DM is Tito Boboy, the youngest. And beside Tito Boboy is Tita Shelo, the eldest child of Lola DM. By the way, incidentally, if those of you who are watching UAAP basketball, your courtside reporter, Bel Gregorio, is the granddaughter of Tita Shelo. So she is also a Macapagal. So next picture, please. Okay, this was a picture I found when Lolo was the president of the Constitutional Convention in, I believe, in 1971. So if you recall, we had for the longest time the 1935 Constitution, and there was a Constitutional Convention that was supposed to revise that Constitution. And my grandfather, Lola DM, became the president of this convention, and he brought his grandchildren in the Quezon City Hall. So I was already born in the 70s, so obviously my memories of Lolo DM was after he became president. He ended his term in 1965. Next slide, please. So this is a picture I found of my Lolo with 8 of his apos. So I'm the baby he's holding there. And beside him is Mikey, former Congressman Mikey Arroyo, and my other cousin. So wala pa dito sina Luli. So my younger cousins are not yet here. So these are also my brothers and the children of Tita Shelo. So my fond memories of my Lola DM was we would always have family gatherings every Sunday with the family when he was still alive. So next picture is my graduation picture from Ateneo de Manila. So one anecdote I can tell you about my lolo is that for all his apos, he never misses special occasions in our lives. So he was always there for every occasion, every graduation, every birthday, every school play. So that's the kind of man he was. No, he loved his family dearly. Beside me is my father, Arturo. Who, among the siblings, he and my Tito Boboy were not involved in politics. So my father was a businessman and also an athlete. He was a 2-time Olympian in shooting. Okay, I don't know if there are more pictures. I think I'm not sure if this is the one of the last pictures. So this again shows my lolo was always present during our birthdays. So for all his apos. So another anecdote I would like to share with you was my lolo for all his apos. He would give us books for our birthday, for Christmas. All his gifts to us are books. And he would always write a dedication, a personal dedication for all of us. So I treasured all the books that he gave me all these years while I was growing up. And I think that was his way of telling us that we should value reading, no? And that's one thing, one legacy I learned from my grandfather is to love reading and to value education. So as Lola Gloria mentioned, Tita Gloria rather mentioned, he um, he was born poor, but because he persevered and because of his education, um, he studied economics and law. He was able to succeed in life, no, and that's another legacy I think that he has given us, his grandchildren, and also the young people that we should value education. So that's very important. And the other legacy that he left us is he would always tell us how much he loved the Philippines. Now, he really loved his country. That's one thing I will never forget that I learned from my lolo, no? That he said, the Philippines is the best country in the world. Lagi niyang sinasabi sa amin yun. So that's one memory I have of him. And so I hope with the photos and with my short anecdotes, I was able to share with you the kind of man he is, the kind of person he is, not only as a politician, but as a family man. No? He loved his children and his grandchildren dearly. You know, just a final word that I also have a special brother. My brother was born with autism, and he was very close to my brother with autism, and he would call him my friend, my friend. So my brother loved him dearly. He would embrace my lolo every time they would meet. So thank you again for inviting us and to share some memories about my lolo. So I now turn you over to my cousin Luli.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you as well to the leadership of National University for this chance to share our experience and memories of our grandfather. So as my cousin said, I'm Luli. I am the daughter of your main speaker, Gloria. I am the middle child. I have an older brother and a younger brother. Both of them entered politics. So I'm the only one who did not. But I like to say that I still continued part of the legacy of my grandfather, which was diplomacy. So my grandfather, one of the things he did when he was in Congress was author the law on the career foreign service. So for me, it was very important to take the foreign service officers exam, which I did, and I passed in the year where only 3 of us passed. But unfortunately, by the time my appointment paper got to Malacanang, which was supposed to be just a ministerial signing, my mother was already president. So, there was no discussion. It was just not signed because of delicadeza. So I guess for us, that was also part of the legacy of good governance of my grandfather, that even if I earned it, just to make sure that there were no aspersions cast on my mother's integrity, then I did not enter the foreign service. Nevertheless, I was able to continue with foreign policy work and in serving different institutions, including WWF as their policy lead for the Coral Triangle Initiative. As my cousin said, we really enjoyed our time with our grandfather. So he always had special periods with each of us, so that we all have very distinct memories with him. And the same as my cousin, I love all the books that I received from my grandfather. So she also said that he never forgot our birthday. So every birthday, he would call or he would come and visit. So when I was studying abroad for my graduate school, at that time there's no, Viber, nothing like that in the early 90s, and it was a long distance call. And at that time it was very expensive. So I waited for the phone call of my grandparents, and my grandmother gave him just enough time to say happy birthday, and then she hung up the phone because mahal yung long distance. But to continue with the lessons that we learned from our grandfather, part of what he also told us was to live within our means, so that all of us always remember. The other thing was to honor public service. So as what I especially remember were their stories about living in Malacanang Palace. So and what stayed with me was the lesson that we were merely custodians of the place. We didn't own the place. They didn't own the place, but my grandmother, made sure that it was kept very clean, and well maintained, so that no matter what the budget was, it didn't look shabby, right? So when it was my mother's turn to be president, that was always top of mind for us, that we are very respectful of the palace. So now I am also chair of the National Museum of the Philippines, and that's that is part of the thrust for me as chair, that as the chair of the National Museum, I have to make sure that we take care of our collections, so that talagang para sa salilahin natin, di ba? So whatever we have in the collections, that is for posterity, and we need to continue telling the story of the Filipino and all our different cultures. So I hope you are able to visit the museums. I guess that's it for now. Perhaps if you have questions, then we can share some more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Luli. Now, to give the audience the chance to know more about President Macapagal and more, we would like to request former President Arroyo, Miss Luli, and Miss Elizabeth to turn on their cams if ever that the audience have questions. So to everyone, may we request our viewers to type in their questions in the FB Live chat box in our live streams, preferably in the National and Heritage Museo and the official NHCP page, and in our MS Teams chat box for the Nationalian employees and students turned in. While you're typing our questions and shoutouts, let us have some roll call of the attendees from each of the NU campuses. May we have some hearts there from the NU Manila students and faculty members. Are you there? Sending some hearts. All right. How about from the NU Nazareth? Okay. NU Laguna. Let's send some hearts. NU MOA. And there we have it. I guess Sir Nani is raising his hand. Sir Nani?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning,
this is
sir.
Nani Garcia. Um, way back in the 1960s and 70s, I was a little boy, and I often heard my elderlies talking about the president, that's President Macapagal, and they noticed that um, there were less projects given to the province of Pampanga, and they were rationalizing that perhaps it was the delicadeza of the president that made him prioritize other poor provinces over Pampanga. What do you think? Um, how did the president balance his delicadeza and the needs of his province of Pampanga? Was it more on having this delicadeza value or this integrity, taking over the progress of the province? How would you explain that?
When I was in the Department of Trade and Industry, I learned that that was really a tradition of presidents, delicadeza, with regard to their own provinces. In fact, when I was at the DTI, we had a project called CAB, Capiz, Aurora, Bohol. Secretary Concepcion, my boss, conceptualized that project because he said, Capiz, Aurora, and Bohol produced presidents. Capiz produced Rojas, Aurora produced Quezon, and Bohol produced Garcia. And yet those provinces were among the poorest provinces in our country. So he said, in return for the sacrifices that they made, working for the whole country, and to the neglect of their own province, let us have special projects for their province. Now, in the case of Pampanga, I suppose my father must have followed that philosophy, although he did explain it to us. But he did say that he was hoping that he would work on the rest of the country first, and then if he got reelected, then he would work on his province. But he wasn't reelected, so he didn't get that chance. But Pampanga still was a more prosperous province than Cavite, than Capiz, Aurora, and Bohol. That's why it was not part of the presidential province project of Concepcion. Anyway, I learned that lesson from CAB and from my dad. So when I became president, at least starting 2003, the third year of my presidency, I started to work for projects for Pampanga. For example, I started the NLEX modernization in 2003. It got finished in my time. And then my flagship was the SETEX, which I started doing the paperwork in 2003 also. And so I'm happy that I was able to do those things, but because I learned my lesson from the three great presidents that came from Capiz, Aurora, and Bohol, and my own father from Pampanga.
Thank you very much for that, Madam. Yeah, can I have another question? Yeah, I could see that the president came from, from rags to riches, from a very poor boy, from a poor town in Pampanga, that was Lubao. And then he went on to become president, from powerlessness to a powerful person of the country. And I understand after hearing and listening to the anecdotes of Ma'am Luli and Melissa, the president remained so simple and humble. But today, I think we may be accepting that there is a culture of corruption everywhere in the country. Do you believe that we can still eradicate corruption?
I'll go back to what my father said about graft and corruption. For himself, he was totally, what they call this, he was totally committed to his own integrity. But as far as society is concerned, this is what he said about graft and corruption. In his memoirs, I'm looking for it now, and he said, this is what he said. Um, Graft and corruption in government have been a serious problem for the new Republic of the Philippines, which came into existence simultaneously with the end of the Second World War. It was a problem too before the war. It tends to aggravate as politicians and officials have increasingly converted politics and public office into a business. Its deterioration must be checked. Corruption in government, like sin in man, may not be completely eradicated, but it can be minimized to a degree as to be tolerable to the civic conscience of the community and to constitute no hindrance to the attainment of robust economic growth and edifying social progress. Then he said something about the Aegean stables. Let me see. He was saying that you don't stop corruption with one fell swoop. Like Hercules destroying the Aegean stables in one fell swoop. Fighting corruption is like addressing a long festering wound here. It his smaller regeneration program recognized that graft in government could not be crushed in a single stroke. As a dragon could be killed with a swing of St. Michael's sword or be washed away like dirty stables with a Herculean douse of water. But like a foul infected wound, it must be healed by patient, constant, steady disinfecting, scraping, and cleansing. And so, if the culture of corruption has surfaced or resurfaced as it was there from forever, I think the educational system is really very important, and I appreciate institutions like National University who put a premium on integrity. And frankly speaking, I'm also sad that now in the lower levels of schools in basic education, they don't have religion and character education anymore, which I think has contributed to the deterioration of moral values.
Thank you very much for that. We have been learning so much from your talks, no? Especially with the value of integrity. And again, thank you. This is something that our youth of today and our students should be learning hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Nani. So we have here a short message from Mr. Jeremiah ODB Garcia. So he said, I am a staunch supporter and believer of the Macapagals' aspiration for our country. As a history teacher, I just hope that there will be a documentary film dedicated to the life and works of President Dadong. Thank you also PGMA for the legacy, especially in terms of infrastructure and economy. I have bought your memoirs and learned a lot from it. More power. I'm FB friends with Miss Bert Leda.
Thank you.
I think, sir, someone's raising his hand. Sir Rainier F. Reyes is raising his hand.
Hi, ma'am. Good morning po. Hi, Luli and Ma'am Lisa. President Macapagal, just like many presidents, came from humble beginnings. The poor boy from Lubao, or a mechanic like President Magsaysay and even Carlos P. Garcia. Do you think it would still be possible for a poor or a simple person like maybe a a student from National University, to still be able to aspire to become president without having wealth or without having to be an actor, so to speak? And this question is to the three guests, Ma'am and Ma'am Luli and Lisa, because I think you also have the youth perspective. Would it still be possible po?
Okay, maybe I'll answer first. So thank you, Dr. Rani,
Ma'am.
for still thinking we're part of the youth. Please, youth pa rin tayo. But I do think that
Ako din.
it's not easy, right? It's not easy anymore because the national running running for a national office requires you to go nationwide. But there is also the advent of social media, and the young people know how to use that. So you don't really have to spend so much, perhaps, in traveling or getting a network. Um, but it is important for us to remember that we really are different cultures in one country. So it is important to reach out to everyone, um, to know the languages, to know the different parts of our history. Um, but we also have people, for instance, like Waikurat, diba? I mean, he's not. We do have examples of that in Congress. Um, Perhaps at some point we will go back to having the Senate representing the regions rather than, you know, nation being a representative of the whole country. And that I think will also help different people from a diversity of backgrounds to be in the national forefront in politics again.
Thank you, Ma'am Luli.
Ma'am Elizabeth, would you like to
Man
add something?
siguro. Yeah, I just want to add, no, as I mentioned, I think the inspiration of my grandfather that in his case, he used education as his tool out of poverty and to become successful in politics and public service. And although difficult, I still believe it's possible now because I'm also a teacher in Ateneo. And although Ateneo is, of course, an elite school, but we have a lot of scholars. And I have some students who really um, came from very low income families and they do well in school. And so that's their gateway to maybe eventually if they want to enter public service and become president. So it's still possible, no? I think although it's harder, but it's definitely possible. So that's my belief.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sir, Sir Rani, shall we also ask Madam President Speaker?
Oh, well, probably if you can enlighten us.
Mom, you're on mute.
I subscribe to what the two girls in the family have said. The present system is very expensive now for candidates. In the time of my dad, it was not so. One of the things that made it very expensive is allowing advertisements. That really made it very expensive. When I ran in 1992, the first time there were no ads, and I was a new politician, so I had to spend mostly the resources of my husband's family, and not people were contributing, contributing to me yet. But although the other better known candidates could run capital intensive campaigns, I could run a labor intensive campaign. I would go to like for instance, after everybody went home in the last from the last rally, I would look for a fiesta because the fiestas are late at night, or and things like that. And then the last 2 weeks of the campaign, I didn't even sleep in a hotel. I slept in the car and went to the hotel to take a bath. So you could substitute labor intensive campaigning from capital intensive campaigning, but you cannot do that anymore with advertising. That's one. And then the reforms that they were that Luli was mentioning. For instance, really the we constitutional changes will really help the poorer candidates have a better chance. And even also like campaign reform, like in America, where they even give a subsidy for candidates depending on their means. So there can be some there can be some alleviation by having some legal and constitutional reforms. And of course, the more the society will be able to transform itself into a modern society with modern values that are not so dependent on money, then the better the poorer candidates will have a chance.
Thank you.
Add, ma'am, if people do not know in the forum, President Gloria Arroyo speaks all of our dialects, I suppose. I remember I was following her, and then she was talking in Ilonggo, and then Cebuano, and then in Chabacano, and Ilocano, and then Spanish, English. She could speak. That's why I think she was also successful, because she could relate, and everybody could relate. The Kapampangas can relate to her. The Sambangueños, the Visayans, the Ilonggos, and I was such amazed, ma'am, with your skill with language.
What was the question?
No, ma'am, I was just telling people.
A comment. Oh, thank you very much. That helps a lot. Yeah, that helps a lot. I learned it from my mom. My mom spoke many languages, including German, because as a medical student, she read German medical books, the original, not the translation. And so I guess I got her gift of languages. But you know, she also taught my father. She taught my father how to speak Spanish. My father spoke Spanish enough to be able to make a successful state visit to Spain in Spanish. And that helped him too. That helped him in his job as chairman of foreign affairs when he was in Congress, and then eventually as president of the Philippines.
Thank you po, ma'am. Thank you po.
Thank you, Sir Rani. We have another question from Professor Norvin M. Palma. He asked, what brand of leadership that former President Diosdado Macapagal had before?
I'll ask the third generation to describe their lolo's leadership.
Please, you first.
I think one way to describe his leadership was, as Tita Gloria mentioned, while he was still vice president, he would go around the country and really visit all the different regions of the country and listen to the people. I think that's one way of describing his leadership. He knows how to listen, and in fact, di ba, Tita Gloria, there was one day in Malacanang during his presidency that he would allow people to enter Malacanang and talk with them. So I think that's one way to describe him, that he listened and he was very participative in his leadership.
Yeah, that was called Common Man's Day, and it was every Friday. Not that Liz and I were alive back then, but of course we heard all the stories. And he really, anybody could come to Malacanang and then give any of their concerns. And then the whole cabinet would be there to do the work, to do the paperwork and whatnot on it. So everything was dealt with, with proper documentation and all of that. And that was something that my mother also repeated during her presidency. So I think the other thing was really, the listening is important. Understanding, again, all our different cultures and in the different regions. And speaking the different languages is an important part of learning understanding the needs of each region. It's very, it's not easily translatable what you say in Bisaya, for instance, to into Tagalog or in English. There's always a different context that you have to understand. So knowing the languages is important. For me also, I think it's it's the compassion and it's the simple living tenet that really stayed with us. So I also remember that one of the things he told me was, yes, there are rules in government that you need to follow, but you have to remember that these rules are to help make the lives of the common man better. So we always have to remember that part, that it's to uplift the lives of everyone. So that's what you try to do. I remember, when I was working in the DFA during the first APEC leaders summit here in the Philippines. Unfortunately, in the civil service, you really, you become masungit. Kasi ang daming problema lahat sa'yo, di ba? So pag sasagot ng telepono, masungit na yung government employee. But you kind of have to remember, also that you're there to serve. So I remember when I started answering that way already, I had to take a step back and remember that it's public service. So no matter what terrible things are said to you or what impossible demands are given to you, you're there to serve the people. And that's really how my, that's what we learned from my grandfather and from my mother.
Thank you, ma'am. We would like to acknowledge Ma'am Esperanza Pascua. She's raising her hand. Maybe she has a question.
Yes, it's not a question, but it's just a comment about Luli. I remember before, when she was still the daughter of the president, there was a picture in the newspaper about her lining up in a queue. I think that was in the Bureau of Customs. Would you remember that? Her picture was there lining up. Alam mo, nagtsatsaga sa pila. It was a long, long queue. And a little later, years later, here was another story. Medyo marites ako ngayon, no? There was another story naman about the daughter of another president. Okay, she was in the United States. She was lining up also in the Bureau of, in the immigration office na. Syempre, the protocol, no? Magla-line up ka. And she was with her 2 sons and 2 yayas. So 5 sila. And then she was insisting that she should be attended to first. And she even gave a comment that, do you know who I am? I am the daughter of the president. That's what she said. I don't know if she was a daughter then or the sister of the president at that time. But anyway, that's the story I want to share. No, that the difference in the behavior of Luli and the behavior of the other daughter. The humility, the resilience. Maybe resilience is a core value of NU. Yun lang. I just want to give that comment. I think, Luli, you remember that? It was in the newspaper. Yung picture mo, you were lining up in that queue, long queue.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
So, yeah.
It was.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. It was also in immigration here, and actually, ma'am, I mean, we didn't have any PR team following us around taking our picture when we did something simple. It was really just the way we lived. So, for instance, I mean, you don't know that Melissa is a PhD and she got, a perfect QPI. It's just the way we were brought up. But I think that particular one, because I traveled a lot for work, and so the people in immigration and in the airline counters, they already knew me, and they knew that it's regular, it's routine. But I think one time there was a lady who was the daughter of a mayor or something who cut into the front of the line. So then I was just not minding because I was looking at my papers, and the airline counter guy told told her, nakikita mo yung babaeng yun dun sa dulo? Anak yan ng presidente, pumunta ka doon. So parang, I guess even for people to use that, to let people know that you still need to have common courtesy and follow the rules, I guess was something that I was useful for at that time. So perhaps it's common courtesy. It's just being kind to both customer and to the customer service officer, and things to remember. Thank you. But thank you for remembering that long ago situation.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a question from Sir Azin Carl Sumalinog. So good morning. This is a question for former President Gloria Arroyo. Was there any program or policy of former President Diosdado Macapagal that you adopted when you became president?
Actually, my comprehensive framework came from him. He talked about that. Well, one was the policy of free enterprise. He removed he removed imported foreign exchange controls. And so I also pushed for the philosophy of free and private enterprise rather than government control. So, and then secondly, his agricultural reforms. He did land reform. So I also did agricultural modernization based on equity. And then he had a very strong social component to his program: housing, education. His program was called the Socio-Economic Development Plan. I also had a very, very strong social component to my program. And then finally, the fourth one is about governance. And so I also had a very strong what they call is advocacy and carrying out of the rule of law. So he had 4 points, and I started with 4 points as well, getting from his program.
Thank you, Madam. So, we have another question from Sir DC Alviar. We value President Diosdado Macapagal's self-denial capacity, talking to people with infinite patience and kind consideration, and the legacy of honoring public service by the Macapagals. Was there a time, Madam President, Speaker Gloria, that you talked to Ma'am Luli to run for a national or local elective office?
Yes, I did. In 2013, when we were in the opposition, and I was going to run for Congress re-election, some of the leaders of Pampanga said, Noy will really zero in on Pampanga because you're running here in our province. You have to have somebody in the family who's not as controversial as you are, or not the focus of Noy's ire as you are. If Luli will be the one to run, she'll get 110% of the votes of the people of her district, and Noy will not pay attention to our province and not persecute the rest of us. So I asked Luli to run, but she just absolutely hates politics, so she didn't accept it, and I had to be the one to run again.
So may we know why Ma'am Luli doesn't really want to hold public office?
Okay, it takes a certain strength of character to be in public office, to offer yourself, to face persecution as my mother did. I cannot do that. It's very hard. I mean, my mother has, talagang she takes to heart her Catholicism. I'm not there yet. It's very hard for me, for instance, to see, people who treated her poorly and who spread, you know, false information against my father and my mother. And when I see them, you see it on my face. So it's very hard. And as a politician, you have to set those things aside. So I remember the first time I saw a political cartoon from the time of my grandfather, and it said he was the ogre of Philippine politics, and I almost cried because to us we knew him as this gentle, kind man, and for somebody to draw a cartoon of him as an ogre and all the connotations that come with that was really quite shocking to us. But as my mother said, one of the things I remember, Liz, was whenever he would have, they would have lunches and dinners with their official family, so the cabinet during his time, and then he would always invite, the widows of the presidents who were still alive. So Mrs. Garcia, Mrs. Rojas, they would all be there. And it was very, very collegial. And so you wouldn't think from reading the papers of that time how how much of a rivalry they had in politics. It really wasn't the way it is now. So for me, I think that's something that we need to remember. Um, Politicians are also humans, and it's hurtful. It's very easy to say, "Ay, wala yang nagawa," but really, I mean, maybe think about, what legacy they've actually brought into their service, and see that part of it. Na it's always better to be kind when we deal with other people. Kasi, syempre, kahit ano, may puhunan din yan na ibinigay sa bansa. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, so this is a comment for former President Speaker Gloria Arroyo. So as a teacher, I am personally flattered that in spite of all her achievements in life and being the highest nationally elected as the president and the highest locally elected leader as the speaker, she would always go back with pride that she is a teacher. I adopted her mantra, which was the mantra of President Dadong as well. Do what is right, do your best, and let God take care of the rest. This is from Sir Jeremiah Odi Garcia. So we have another question from Sir Jericho Paler. I think this would be our last question for this morning. So for Madam PGMA, as an economist, how will you describe former President Diosdado Macapagal's economic policy during his presidency?
Well, if the proof of the pudding is in the eating, it was a very, very good economic policy. His policy of free enterprise, land reform, strong social component, and strict moral values. By the end of his term, the Philippines was second only to Japan in economic development. Can you imagine we were better off than Korea, than Hong Kong, than Taiwan at the time? So the proof of the pudding was in the eating.
Thank you, Madam President and Sir Jericho, for your question. So there we have it. We now conclude the open forum and question and answer. Now let us proceed to the awarding of the e-certificates.
So, no. Wait, no, no.
May I request Ms. Christine Villadiego to read the citation of the certificate?
NUCS, National Yan Cluster, the National University Heritage Committee, Language Institute, and Museo at Aklata ni Pangulong Diosdado Macapagal award this Certificate of Appreciation to Honorable Gloria M. Macapagal-Arroyo, PhD, for sharing her expertise in the webinar entitled Cong Dadong's Legacy on Good Governance, given this 20th day of April 2022 at National University, Manila via MS Teams. Signed by Dr. Richard Ryan C. Villegas, Dr. Marius Hernani S. Garcia, and the Curator of Museo at Aklata ni Pangulong Diosdado Macapagal, Hil Angelo B. Manalili.
Thank you. Let's give Madam President Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo a virtual round of applause. Now, the same citation is given to Ms. Maria Elizabeth Macapagal and Ma'am Luli Arroyo. All right. So we would like to ask the members of the participants to, we would like to request the members of, or the participants of the webinar to please turn on their cameras for the photo op.
I'll be taking the picture. Please look at the camera. 1, 2, 3. Another one, please. Using the large gallery mode. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tin. So we would like to thank the former president and her family for gracing this event. Indeed, the
Thank you,
national
ma'am.
and our guests learned a lot about your father and his enduring legacy. We would like to thank those who shared this webinar in their respective Facebook pages. Our next webinar, we will be hearing about the stories of some of our basketball legends on their journey and route to winning our 2 UAAP titles. To Mr. Adelino Manching for streaming this webinar in Facebook Live, to Ms. Christine Villadiego and Mr. Radney Renario of the Language Institute for assisting in the entire event, to Mr. Gil Angelo Manalini for allowing this to be streamed in the Museo at Aklata ni Pangulong Diosdado Macapagal, and to all who attended this webinar, including our alumni and guests, thank you so much. Again, don't forget to like our National Yan Heritage and Museo Aklata ni Pangulong Diosdado Macapagal FB pages. It's at National Yan Heritage and at nhcp.macapagal Museum. And lastly, don't forget to answer the evaluation form posted in the MS Teams for your e-certificates. Again, thank you for tuning in to this webinar, and we hope that you learned a lot about the stories about President Diosdado Macapagal. For the National Yan Cluster, the NU Heritage Committee, the Language Institute, and the Museo at Aklatan ni Pangulong Diosdado Macapagal, I am Leroy Rubio, and we will see you again in the next webinar. Have a great week and stay safe always. Now, let us all sing with honor and pride our National U hymn.
I pledge my life, my honor, shall wave thee, golden with the colors of national youth. I shall wave